Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing.
Welcome, everyone, to Morning Magazine for this April 7th, 2021. You have your host, James J. Malouf here. We're joined by our friends from the Wood County Sheriff's Department. We have, of course, Sheriff Shawn Becker with us today, and Sergeant Doug Christianson as well, along with our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. We have Joe in today. Spot Joe. We never see Joe. Good to see you, Joe. Nice to have you with us. And always appreciate our friends from Rapids Community Media being here. First off, good morning, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for being here. We appreciate it. How are things going with you and yours? Shawn, how's everybody doing?
Doing well. Boy, time is flying by. We're already into April already. It's the year is going by way too fast. But
I still don't know what happened to January. I lost track of it, and all of a sudden, before I looked, it was April. Doug, how are you and yours doing?
Doing very well.
Good. And really appreciate you being here today, Doug, because not only is it great anytime we have any of you guys from the department in, but specifically with what your new position is in this new position and that's going on. And Sheriff, I wonder if you could kind of touch on that and help introduce Doug here a little bit.
Yeah. First, I always like to start by thanking all of our local medical care providers and our Wood County Health Department and Sue Comfortman and her staff. It's just over a year of being in the pandemic. I remember a year ago, Easter, how that was so different for everybody, where everything's shut down, and it was really enlightening for us to, last Sunday get the opportunity to, be out with family, friends, and that's a huge testament, especially to our local medical providers, our health department, and all the hard work that they've been doing together as a team, trying to keep us all safe during this pandemic. We're not done with it. People need to understand that, but having those folks in our corner makes me feel quite a bit more comfortable. They've been working with us very closely, with our staff and all law enforcement. I know that there's been quite a few vaccination clinics that we've been helping out, providing security for. Everything's been going very well with that, and things are moving along, quite rapidly with the vaccinations, and that's great. So, but still, a reminder, keep social distancing, masking when appropriately. Just all those guidelines that are being recommended by our medical providers is very important. So a big thank you for what they're doing. I'm going to keep saying that at the start of
can't thank them enough
of opportunities like this. But thanks Sue, thanks to your staff and all of our medical providers.
I second that. A huge thank you to all of them. We've been so fortunate during this past year to have these particular people in these positions in this area. They're so good at what they do, and we're very fortunate for that. And to your point, we're getting near we're closer to the end than the beginning of this thing. But every one of us has played baseball. One of the first things you learn, you hit a home run, you got to touch all the bases. It doesn't count if you don't touch all the bases. We're rounding second on this thing. We've got to touch third and home plate, otherwise we're going to be stuck, having the bat again. And we need to make sure we touch all the bases on this thing.
Yeah.
So as far as what Doug is doing here.
Yeah, well, just a little history on Doug. He started his law enforcement career with the State Patrol just a couple of years ago.
It's always weird when people are talking about you and you're in the room, isn't it, Doug?
Yeah, it's weird.
Well, we're about the same age, so I'm not going to pick on his age too much. Maybe a little bit, but if he gives it back, I deserve it. But, he started his career. We're fortunate enough to hire him in 1999 as a deputy, and then throughout his career, he spent the majority of the time on the road. But the biggest thing that I noticed with Doug through the past several years is his passion for mental health. And going back quite a few years ago, I know we talked about it on air, when requirements or things changed towards commitments to folks that were really struggling out in life, and things changed where the decision making, law enforcement was kind of pulled away from that. Crisis intervention took a stronger role. And that was a fast change for law enforcement, and a lot of us struggle with that, including Doug, quite a bit. And I always like to talk about the story of when I was a patrol lieutenant overseeing the patrol division. When this change happened, Doug was in my office a lot, just struggling with the decisions that were being made for folks, and that led to a lot of things that are very positive for my feeling with law enforcement, the way we're training people, and we'll get to it a little bit here shortly with our CIT training, the crisis intervention training. Just completed our ninth class locally, having more than 200 local law enforcement officers go through this training. But a lot of that started from where, Doug really questioning the mental health calls of service that we were dealing with and taking us away from, part of the decision making. And that led to a lot of great things and to the position that he's in now. Recently, we put in for a grant with the Legacy Foundation, basically put in for a sergeant, a leadership position that has a mental health focus. So a lot of, and Doug can talk about, speak to what he's doing now. He's fairly new in the role, but what I like to speak about with Doug is the passion that he has for mental health and really how that fits into the law enforcement role, and it's pretty big. Our calls of service, not just for the Sheriff's Department, but for all law enforcement, not just in central Wisconsin, but everywhere. A lot of the calls of service we deal with have, something to do with mental health. And it could be just even a domestic disturbance or somebody that is thinking about harming themselves or just having some trouble in life, whether it's addiction or something. We're usually the first person that gets called, and establishing and developing those strong working relationships with human services, your local hospitals, and that all fits into the position that Doug has now, and we're very excited with the opportunity that the Sheriff's Department has moving forward with this position. I strongly believe it's going to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I had no doubt it will. I was so excited that this was happening, that when we first talked about the grant and the proposal and the idea and creating all this, and to see where we are now. It hasn't been that long since, it's been a while and everything, but it hasn't been that long since the beginning and the first time we talked about this and to where we are now and having Doug in this position and everything. It's really impressive in the sense that things like this don't usually take a lot more time, I feel, to get done. Do you guys feel that the past year sort of helped this? Because I'm a big believer in silver linings, and I think that's one of the things that we have to do in this past year is take whatever silver linings we can. And one thing that I feel, as somebody who's my whole life, mental health has been I've been an advocate for it without realizing it. I've been trying to bring awareness to it or something. And it feels like in the past year, it seems like society has kind of caught up to that for those of us that have always had this in the forefront of our minds. Like all of a sudden people are, during quarantine times and stuff, talking about mental health and how important it is to focus on those things. So do you think that helped getting to where we are now with this position and with what Doug's going to be doing?
That's hard to say. I don't think it hurt it. This was something that, we were paying attention to years ago, and reverting back to the crisis intervention training, looking at other law enforcement agencies that had this position, and they're larger agencies. You didn't see many county sheriff's departments that had that position, but it didn't mean it couldn't fit for us. But the position wasn't entirely new. We had the opportunity to take a look at other agencies, Madison Police Department, Appleton Police Department, but those agencies obviously even have a higher call to service and have many, mental health officers. Here we got an opportunity, as we moved along with our initiative on how important we feel, mental health is to the community, to people, that how is that going to fit with the Sheriff's Department? And that's where, the grant came into play. And, we had a legacy grant before through the jail. That we were getting provided grant money to continue our mental health program back in the jail, which we've talked about at length. But that kind of springboarded the opportunity to say, hey, maybe this is the perfect time for us to apply for that grant for a position that's a sworn position, that's going to work out in the field and be that person that connects with so many resources. So, long story short, I think that it didn't hurt this opportunity as we move forward, but it was something that we had been thinking about for years.
When it comes to this position with Doug, what is going to be on your plate exactly? What will you be in charge of? What will you be doing as in this realm, in this new division?
Well, it starts off that basically any event that we respond to as a Sheriff's Department that involves a component of mental health, those reports are being forwarded to me. So I'm reviewing all the reports and then kind of talking to the officers involved, if necessary, the other outside agencies that are involved, And just trying to make a determination, have we done everything that we can up to this point? You know, would it be appropriate to touch base with the people that are actually front and center, the people that we're involved with, to see if there's more that we can do? Moving forward, each week I've been contacting local resources, introducing myself, you know, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm looking to do. We're looking to basically establish a unified front with all of our local resources, and I'm talking about places that are outside the actual government type resources that we already know about. I'm talking about the grassroots community-based ones that maybe a lot of officers don't know about. As I'm moving forward, I've already discovered a couple that I've been a patrol officer here in the county for almost 22 years, and I didn't know they were there. And I'm getting to go inside of places that I've driven past countless times, getting to meet the staff, getting to understand what they're already doing, and some of these programs are absolutely amazing.
It's that's really insightful to hear. That's really interesting and incredibly. Shawn, I see what you're talking about. This is the right man for the job. That extra step that you take there when doing that, not just using the resources that are on the paper and you already know about and that we all know about, but doing a little digging. And that's first off, that's something that it speaks to why you're wearing that badge and why you guys do this job and everything. You have that thought. You do that extra, take that extra step. But in this field, in this job, I would like to say that it's almost vital. It's almost incredibly important because these relationships that we talk about, you know, Shawn, you were talking about this earlier about the different groups and different people that you work with and talk to in the community. Those relationships are certainly important because we never know when they may come into play. But when we're talking about mental health, one of the things that so many people seem to like kind of put to the side is the pride part of it, the shame part of it, these things of bringing this up to people, of telling people about this. And when you get into these groups that you're talking about there, Doug, there's a lot more trust. There's a lot more sharing going on. And that's going to be very helpful for you going forward here, I would imagine, when you have all these different things coming up. Having these relationships built before you need them, having an established already communication. I imagine that's going to help a lot.
That is going to help a lot. When I first started in law enforcement, we didn't have a lot of options when we were dealing with people in crisis or people dealing with a mental illness. We pretty much had, we can call crisis intervention and do an emergency detention to try to get somebody into a mental health facility. We could walk away from them, or if there was a crime committed, we could possibly arrest them. But now moving forward and being aware of what's going on, so many different tools and avenues have been identified that we don't necessarily have to use the old resources that we had leaned on for so long.
Which I feel like, going back to one of the first conversations Shawn and I had, is going to help with that revolving door of inmates. The inmate that they get inside, they get out, and they come right back. That kind of thing. That so much of that stems from mental health, and as we're being able to, we may not see these things in the next year or so, but as the decades move on, we're going to see a big change. I feel in a lot of that, and that returning customer, if you will.
Yeah, and you're talking about the if I could say recidivism rate. Try to say that 10 times.
Right? Yeah. Good luck.
Come on, do it. Recidivism. Anyway, no, and it's a very serious topic, and any county jail or prisons are really looking at that because that's something that's coming up because we're looking at the potential of moving forward with a new facility, and that's something that we discuss at length. How can we work on that? And we have. And a lot of it is really revolved about what you just said, the mental health side of things and what the Sheriff's Department has been doing and what we potentially can do in the future. Our jail discharge planner has been doing an outstanding job, Sarah Slutsky. She came on here and talked about when she's, was just into her position and now putting things together, pulling data together, working not just with Doug, but with all of us, moving forward, because that's a big issue because, you hate to look at somebody that's spending time in our facility as a dollar, but unfortunately it is. And I'll go on my soapbox, and when you look at, housing 90 people out of county that do not get the opportunity to do the jail or the inmate programming that we do, how are we really helping them? Okay, they're doing the time for something that they did wrong, all right? And I've always said that you always have to look at, the opportunity to try to help somebody so they don't come back. We don't want them to come back. We want them to be successful out in the community, providing them for themselves and a family, paying taxes. I mean, it's a huge win. So why not try that opportunity while somebody is in the facility in our jail for whatever time that may be? And if you look at, the grant money that's coming our way, with Doug, mental health based, grant money coming for the criminal justice coordinator, which fits in so many different things, and those connection sources with, human services and connecting people with resources as they're leaving jail, again, so they don't come back, is a huge need. And then plus we got a grant for another, investigator, a drug investigator. So, I mean, people are paying attention to this locally and federally, these types of things, for mental health, which is connected to drug abuse. So, I take pride in talking about the programming that we've done in our jail, because the goal is to reduce our inmate population. Will we reduce it 90 people? No. I'll tell you that right now. But if we can reduce it down to 75 or something like that, I'd love to get out of our inmate housing, because I illustrated that pretty clearly in a story that was published recently, and what that cost is right now to the Wood County taxpayers and what we've been paying. At one point, back in the day, it made so much sense to house out of county, because building a facility is expensive. But I feel that we've hit that tipping point where you're housing 90 people out of county. They're viewed as more of a as a revenue source for that county, and we understand that. But what bothers me is, okay, and as that revenue source is a dollar symbol, what are they getting the programming to help them transition back out into the community? Because whether they're housed in Adams County or Opaka, they're going to be coming back to Wood County, whether it's Marshfield, Wisconsin Rapids. Once those folks are released for the behavior, the mistakes they made, they're going to come back. And did we provide them enough help? I'm going to say no. But that's something that we're working on now with our ad hoc committee. Things are going, in my opinion, really well. We're discussing a lot of these things. The last meeting that we had with our ad hoc committee was very, in my opinion, productive. We just talked about our inmate programming and what we're doing now. COVID kind of put a damper on some of that, but we're working through that, and things are starting to somewhat get back to normal. But that's a huge investment, and I'm really happy to see that our county board is paying attention to that very closely. It was a very good presentation from Three Bridges with Smart Recovery and what they've been doing. Midstate Technical College with the program that they put together. Windows to Work, and then Sarah did an outstanding job with her presentation about, here are the resources now, here are the people that want to come in. And there's a lot of people that want to come in, that are vetted, that want to come and start something, just to try to help out. Right. And like I said, she put together just a really nice presentation, a lot of information. And I tell people to take a look at, the county website, where you see the meetings, you'll see the minutes, you'll see what's discussed. And if this is something that pertains to you, or you have questions about it, look at the website. You'll see Sarah's presentation. What she put together. And did it outstanding. She did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah. We are going to touch on the jail before we wrap up today. We'll definitely get to that. I wanted, because you talk about this, we've talked about this a lot and a number of times, and it's one of those things that I always like to, it feels like, not so much remind people, but just remind ourselves, remind society in general, that the purpose of jail, the purpose of this system that we have, and it's a two-prong attack. It is, accountability, certainly. That is first and foremost, being, you do something wrong, the old phrase is still true. You do the crime, you got to do the time, that sort of thing. But then what happens after that? It isn't just the one-prong thing that you do that, you count up, go, you do your time and come out. It's not that. It is about, okay, you're in, now learning from what you did, learning from your mistakes. It is no different than when we were kids and our parents would make us, put our nose in the corner and everything and think about what we did. That's what you're doing. You got to think about what you did and learn from it. We've lost that latter part. We've lost that latter part of okay, an inmate goes in and, like when my dad did it, he used to joke about it. You either read or you get built. You work out, and that's it. so many people, focus on these two little things or certain parts of it. And this is opening things up more. This is getting more along the lines of, well, what brought you here? Why are you here? And kind of bringing Doug into this with the mental health aspect of it, because that is such a key part of this. Sure, you got knuckleheads out there. You got people that are just going to mess up, but there are people out there that are doing things that are, I don't want to say out of their control, but it's not so much them calling the shots, that their brain is. And I know that for some people that may sound a little silly, but for anybody who has ever had mental health issues or knows somebody who has, it isn't like they're deciding to make these decisions themselves sometimes. Now, when it comes to that part of it, there is what I brought up first about accountability. That's something that I think a lot of people push back about. They think mental health and they think, oh, I want an excuse for getting away with things. Oh, I did this because I was sad. I did this because what have you and everything. When this is not an excuse, it's an understanding the facts. It's more about that. There aren't excuses being made here or anything like that. It's more about understanding all the data that's in front of you and why this is going on, digging a little deeper into this. Is that kind of something that you guys you've struggled with as far as not, I wouldn't say so much with yourselves, but when it comes to like maybe talking with the attorneys and things like that, expressing this person here, they did this for this reason or that kind of thing.
Thinking about that, I think
I really didn't give you anything to work with there. I should apologize, Shawn. I was just thinking about it. Like, all I did was jump on a soapbox. That's all I did just now.
Well, no, but it's a good point. And, I personally appreciate your thoughts and your opinions about mental health. I really do, and how it relates to a jail. But, I think there's a lot of community support. And you brought up, okay, if somebody did something and uses this as an excuse, we're still going to give them the opportunity to say, all right, here's some resources that we have. Now it's up to you. Mm-hmm. You can't make them when they're in custody, and some people don't want to. And, that's really up to them. But I think we do our due diligence by providing the opportunity there, because it might take a while. I hope it doesn't, but, community support is very strong. I think when, circling back to a little bit of the programming that's mental health based or education based, I think that there's whether it's, our local attorneys, I think people are paying attention to that, and I think there's a vested community interest, and really, honestly, should be.
So you're seeing a lot more people on the same page, in different departments and that kind of thing. That's good to hear. And there's some, really, really like exciting things. And I know that's a weird word to maybe use with this, but I'm encouraged by this because of so many layers to it. Certainly helping with that revolving door and that kind of thing. But then there's the part of this where there's generations of people, including our own generations, that grew up not necessarily knowing much about these things, or they weren't able to diagnose certain things. We're still learning about the Asperger's spectrum and learning, autism and different parts of that and everything. So maybe, you have this person who commits a crime, they get arrested, they come in, and they find out that they have mental health issues when they've spent their whole life not knowing that they were dealing with this. It's interesting, the different layers, that different ways that we can help people with this, with having this division and everything. It could be there's stuff that we're not even seeing yet of ways that could help our society and our communities and that.
Well, when you look at our jail and somebody that does get booked in for it could be anything, and then we have that assessment that our corrections officers do, and then our mental health providers within our facility, we'll meet with them. Now, whether they want to talk with them or not, that's again back to that individual if they do. But that assessment will take place, and then that's where you're exactly right. Something could be at least identified as, hey, you have something going on here that we possibly could help you with, and that might be all that individual really needs to hear. That realization is there is a concern here. All right, how do we work on it, and how do we work on it together? While I'm here, and then maybe it's working with their family, or human services, and then you put in the other investments that the county has been making with the jail discharge planner, saying, okay, we've got some, appointments that we can set up for you once you leave, and you're following through with them. Housing has been identified as being a pretty big issue. Okay, how can we work on that? So, those opportunities are there, but it really, again, it boils down to the individual communicating that, hey, and then maybe find out that there's a concern here that we could help out with while you're in custody.
Yeah. We are speaking with the Wood County Sheriff's Department along with our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media and to record. We're going to take a real quick commercial break, come back with more Morning Magazine on AM 1320 WFHR. You're joined by the Wood County Sheriff's Department. I have, of course, Sheriff Shawn Becker with us and Sergeant Doug Christianson here as well, along with our friend Joe in Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. And thank you to all of you guys for being with us today.
Appreciate being here.
Doug, I was wondering if we could go to the CIT classes, in a class that was going on.
Yeah, we've been running CIT classes, that's Crisis Intervention Teams, in Wood County since 2016. Prior to that, kind of when I was complaining an awful lot to Shawn, we had discovered that class over in Appleton. And I got sent to that class, and it's a week long and very intensive training. And when I came back, I get to put some of those principles into use almost immediately, and it worked. It worked like I'd never seen before. With a situation that we'd normally struggle with, it went really easy. So I spoke with Shawn, told him about all the high points, and we made a decision that we were going to start training all of our officers. First couple of batches, we sent them out to other established CIT trainings, and eventually the decision was made to begin hosting it right here in Wood County. Since that time, we've been able to do 9 classes. Somewhere 200, 225 officers have been trained right here. So the class starts off, we have community representatives that come in, including a doctor that talks about mental illness, the different medications, possibly some different behavior traits that we would be seeing as officers. We have a panel of community members that come in and tell their story, things that have happened that are good concerning law enforcement, bad things that have happened. They talk about how their medications affect them, different things that we as law enforcement officers can do to help bring a situation down, to calm them down, to bring them back to a place where things are going a lot better, that they're not in crisis. Moving forward, we talk about different resources that we do have available in the community, which our last class was actually surprised at the number that are available.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Yeah.
Yep. Then we have a few people that come in and tell their personal stories, including law enforcement members. And we wrap up the week by having a day of scenarios where officers walk into a situation, they have to assess what's going on, kind of decide what community resources they want to use, different approach methods to be able to speak with people that are in crisis.
Yeah.
And each situation is different, so you're going to want to read that, and then, you know, if you move forward with something that's not working, you need to be able to back up and try something else, and keep trying that until you find an avenue that does work.
Yeah.
So
with a with a field like this, especially, I imagine these relationships that we were talking about earlier about having different resources to go to are so incredibly important too. Just because there is no one answer for most of these situations you guys are in when it comes to that. Anything with mental health, you know, it's a case by case basis. So much of the way, you know, I could be diagnosed with the same thing Shawn is, but the way I react to this and the way Shawn does is going to be very different. So being able to have resources and people that you know question, you know, talk to and everything is going to be very helpful, I imagine. And this class is helping people with that and make those relationships.
that's correct. You kind of touched on one of the areas that we stress. Each person is an individual. They cannot be handled, you know, as a problem that we're going to show up and solve. This is a person, an individual who belongs to somebody. They have a husband, they have a wife, they have kids, they have a mom and dad. This is somebody, and they need to be treated with respect, with dignity, and we're teaching our officers to slow down when they can.
Right.
And when the situation allows, we can take time and hear their backstory and hear them out and actually begin to try to put ourselves in their shoes to try to move forward to help them the best that we can.
I'm sorry, Doug. I don't get speechless very often in my life, but I'm a little speechless right now. and Shawn and I have talked about this many times and everything. My experiences with law enforcement have not been very positive throughout my life, and it has been usually in the crux of them not taking a second to listen, and on the other side of that, me immediately them seeing that badge and immediately making an assumption about that person. It's been a two-sided thing. What you're talking about here is just doing the simplest thing of understanding a human being is in front of you. And how important it is for us as citizens to understand that you guys are human beings. It's something that Shawn and I talk about all the time when we talked about in the beginning and everything as far as people approaching and looking at law enforcement as human beings, as citizens, as members of our community and that sort of thing. I didn't even think about you guys on the other side of that. In part because, to be fair, in part because everybody I've gotten to work with in this situation, in these rooms here, has treated people as human beings. But to hear somebody with that badge talking like that, I cannot tell you how much that means, not only to me, but clearly, but to anybody I grew up with, anybody that grew up like I did, or anything like that, anybody who's ever been on that side of things. It is so vital going forward here. We need law enforcement. There is no defunding or getting rid of any of our law enforcement or anything like that. Watch a Western and see how that went. It doesn't go well. What we do need, though, is some reworking, some to revamp some certain things. And one of the first things we need to do is as a society doing that, looking at each other as human beings, taking a moment. Certainly, you can't do that with every situation. There are certain situations that it's a call to action. You've got to react quickly. But when you can take a second and just understanding that's a human being in front of you, like you said, with a family, with friends, with people that care about them. Going from there and then building from that and going from there with it, that's just really enlightening. That's really encouraging to hear. I apologize. Got completely, just really took me off guard there. And it's not good to make the guy who's got to talk for a living speechless, Doug. Not a good thing to do. But that speaks to how important these classes are. And how I imagine how much, I don't want to say fun, but how good it's probably felt being a part of something like this, I imagine.
Early on, after I had attended one of the first, our department's first training, when we had a crisis situation and I showed up, I would take over. What I didn't know was a couple of guys on my crew had been sent to CIT training elsewhere. So I showed up at a call and I listened for a little bit and I jumped in, and the individual I was working with jumped over the top of me and handled the complaint some more. I thought, okay, what's going on? So I did it again. And then he jumped in again, and I backed up and I started listening. And there was a marked difference compared to how this particular deputy used to handle things compared to how it's handled now. And it was because of this training. I tell the classes this is one of two trainings that has completely changed who I am as a law enforcement officer and who I am as a person.
That's really, that not only is that cool, but I appreciate you sharing that. That's something that I think a lot of people can take points from. And again, it speaks to why this class is important. And I can hear it in your voice a little bit too, Doug, that it's got to feel good too for somebody who has been a champion of something like this and talking about mental health for a long time to be where we are now with it, where we have a division, and you're in all these different parts of it, to be where we are now, where we began.
We've come a long way, but I see that we have a long way to go yet.
Well, that's just it too. It's good. It's important to take points from where we can, where that we've accomplished a lot and good things are happening, but there's still work to be done. And kind of piggybacking off of that, if you don't mind, Doug, I wanted to get into some of the talk of the jail and
Sure.
get talking about that and discussing that a little bit more, because certainly that's a talking point, and it's been a talking point as long as I can remember, to be honest. We've talked about this a bit, Sheriff, but we've had some changes since the last time we talked about it.
Yeah, and you're right. Just a little history that we have discussed before as a reminder that, Wood County was looking at potentially building a new facility, a jail, in the early 2000s. They did a study, identified that there's some needs there, and the county board agreed that, the need is there, but the funding wasn't at that time. The biggest change right now is, well, the need's still there, and probably even more so now, but the funding's gone up. If you look at, or I shouldn't say funding, the cost, back in the early 2000s, the estimate to build a facility, a jail, was around $20 million. What do you think it is now?
Yeah.
Around 60. Right. So, if you look at it, if we keep kind of, not doing anything, going on that path, the building costs are going to continue to go up, and we've got to do something. We've got to do something with our facility. There's a lot of needs right now that we need to fix that are millions of dollars to look at. I've already touched upon, the out-of-county housing costs, but you have to look at our facility. It was built in the 1950s, added on in the late 1980s. So think about a facility that's run 24 hours a day, and how often do those get updated? I always like to compare it to like a busy airport. Our facility's being run 24/7, and things do break down. Maintenance needs to be, dealing with things, over and over. So you got that to look at. And then, I can touch upon the tragedies that we've had in our facility where people took their lives. That has a huge cost, a human cost, and there's a financial cost as well to the county. You look at the insurance aspect of that, I can't go into details, but I can tell you that it did cost the county some money. And now you look at, as being insured, with that type of facility, it costs the county more on our premium because of the way the things are set up. It's not that, it's in corrections, the newer design is a modular design, but that's been there for more than 20 plus years, maybe even 30 years. And look where the age of our facility is and that style it is. So there's a lot of things that the county board is going to have to take a look at. I'm really happy that Lance Plimmel put together this ad hoc committee. We've been meeting a lot, and that's where I tell people, if you want to take a look at information that we're putting together, it's an open book. I mean, if you have a question or somebody has a question, ask. All right, because this is a big project. We have to do something as we move forward, and I really encourage people to take a look at our website, look at our public safety committee meetings. But most of the minutes that I would pay attention to would be the jail ad hoc committee, because those are being very, very specific. And like I talked a little bit about the programming, and that's what was the last meeting that we had was dedicated to just the programming of what we're doing and what we want to do, and then the challenges that we're having with the current facility. Our jail only has 3 meeting rooms, 1 library that you can get 10 plus people in it, and then meeting rooms that are designed to have one-on-one. I now look at, you got probation agents coming in, you have attorneys coming in, you have our mental health providers that are all fighting for this space. And there's priorities that we have to take with people, like if they're meeting with an attorney, well, their case is coming up. That'll bump out a meeting that maybe our mental health provider or jail discharge planner had scheduled. So you look at the logistics of what we're dealing with right now. The room isn't there. Our jail discharge planner doesn't even have her office in the jail because there's no room. And then all of our administration personnel are put into the old rec room, where a ping pong table is. Now you're sharing that space with 5 people, that run our jail. And then we have a couple other offices that are already occupied. So there's a lot of, the need is there. I can't, stress that enough. But it's not my decision. It's not my job to sell a new jail. And
it shouldn't have to be.
It's our job to provide the accurate information. And that's what it revolves around.
I feel like you guys got enough on your plate. I feel like this community could do a lot better of speaking up on these things, and not so you don't have to. Because honestly, you shouldn't have to do these things. We all understand that we're just kicking the can down the road here with this thing. That all we're doing is putting it off for the next generation or somebody else to have to deal with it, or the next grouping in there, because it's going to need to be done eventually. In sooner rather than later here, and it shouldn't take a tragedy to make something happen. I thought about this when we had the change at the city hall and everything, and now you go in there and you have the detector and everything. That happened, and it didn't take a tragedy to make that happen. It didn't take some horrible thing at city hall, and now we got to have these detectors in there. Same thing with this jail. We've already had enough, troubles and horrible things happen, certainly, but it shouldn't take something monumental for people to suddenly turn around and say, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe we should do something about the jail." We've been talking almost a whole hour about mental health, and we talk about inmates, and we talk about these sorts of things and stuff. Another important part of mental health is you guys. And the things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, most people out there wouldn't be able to get out of bed the next day with what you guys handle. So there's certainly a whole level to that as far as mental health goes. But how about going to work? How many people go to work and don't know your surroundings are not built for your job? You know your surroundings are outdated. We deal with that literally every day we come to work here at the radio station, and we have our trials and tribulations with it, but we're doing radio. It's entertainment. It's not that big of a deal. It's different on your level. It's a lot different on your level.
That's an important thing to note, the safety and the security of the staff.
Right.
With this kind of a facility and the people that are in it.
All the people, everybody.
You have to really consider that, because we have a requirement to keep people safe back there, and whether they're an inmate or staff member, that's on us to do. And the facility itself isn't conducive to that kind of environment. That's why you've seen the changes over many years ago of the designs of a jail or a prison. But we're talking about a jail here. A lot of things are coming together that are helping us or the county board to consider this kind of project with borrowing rates at a historic low. I don't know if we'll ever see the borrowing rates at this level again. I really don't, and they're only going to go up.
Well, that's just I keep coming back to that.
Yeah, they're only going to go up, and that's something that I go back to the committee. They're grabbing bits and pieces of things to cover in each meeting, and that was one of them that we just listened to folks come in and say this is where it's at right now, and these types of borrowing projects are in your favor to move forward with. So a lot of those things are being brought up. The site that we're looking at is on site of the courthouse property, and for me, the impact on the city of Wisconsin Rapids, there's going to be an impact. All right, we're not going to ignore that, but for me, what would completely ravel this project is if we had to buy, people's homes. We do not. Based upon the last designs that we've put together and moving the facility closer to the courthouse, that won't be an issue. That we don't have to say, we're going to, we need to buy your property and throw eminent domain out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I would never support that. But with and coming through all the talks that we've had, we've been able to design something that will work, connect very closely to the courthouse. And then we have to deal with our old jail. We had talked about for a while maybe demoing our current jail and then rebuilding there. But we quickly found out there's a lot of hidden costs that we weren't considering. Because if you do that, how are you going to be operational?
Yeah.
For the duration of the project, which is about 2 years. And once we started really looking at those costs, we're already housing 90 people out. Now we're going to house the other 100 or so somewhere else. And then how do you operate 24/7 currently in service not only our law enforcement agency but the rest of them within the county if they have a new booking? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
We kicked around potentially using the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department or Marshfield Police. That quickly we realized that, and then with all the other costs, that just wasn't going to work because you need to have those facilities DOC compliant, and then that might require some modifications, remodeling, and then working with the cities, which we have really good working relationships, but it just wasn't feasible, unfortunately, because it would have been nice to put it right exactly where the jail is now. But we also look at some opportunities with the current jail. If we do move forward with the project, we'll have space there that will work in either taking the complete jail down or remodeling it to some level, because there are going to be future space needs that the county is going to have to consider. And it's going to still be out on that courthouse campus. Parking. We've got a lot of things that we still are going to discuss, but that's all been coming through our ad hoc committee, and I'm really happy to see all the planning, all of the topics that are related to this project that we've discussed.
I appreciate that. The one of the first things you brought up about the comparison in price 20 years ago to now, that kind of thing is something that should be in people's minds, because this is only going to get cost more and more as we drag this out here and everything.
Right.
And so much the details, the logistics of this. I think that a lot of people may not understand or may even know certain things. So telling us certain things about not having to move houses and things like that is really important. If people want to find out more about this or just re-go over some of the things you just touched on, is there somewhere they can go for those resources?
Go take a look at the county website and then look at the past meetings and take a look at the minutes, and everything that's discussed at those meetings are there. And then if you want to come to the future meetings, please come to them, or you can remote in, and listen to it. There's an opportunity for public comment. But this is going to come pretty fast. I think our plan and the goal is to present to the entire county board in May, and then they get an opportunity to vote on it in June. So this will come up, like I said, pretty quick. And we've had some designs that are attached to the meeting minutes. We're tweaking them a little bit, but I think that the site is looking good. We still have to work with the City of Wisconsin Rapids on potentially vacating Avon Street. That doesn't have a huge impact on the City of Wisconsin Rapids because that part of the street, all the utilities and everything service the courthouse. So you're not looking at an impact on as far as utilities impacting local residents. There. But I mean, don't get me wrong. There's an impact to the. I mean, when you're looking at a construction project like this, it's big. I'm not gonna say it's not. Yeah. But what, like I said, for me, seeing it fit on our courthouse campus is really important because now you've got your courthouse and they're so connected. The facilities are so connected between your courthouse and a jail. I mean, they're simultaneously working together all the time. So having it fit in that spot, I think is really important. Yeah, and there's again some details of this that I hadn't even thought about myself that I appreciate you bringing up, and it's great to hear that. Certainly, it's not surprising to hear that they've thought of these things, but it's just interesting to hear that kind of stuff has already been taken care of. We've got that. We already thought of that. That's something that we've covered. It hopefully gets this thing moving, It hopefully gets us going to where we're not just talking about it. Well, then I mentioned the timing, and then you have to look at our contracts, with Adams and with Packet County are up at the end of 2022. So we have to, timing-wise, we're going to start renegotiating that, and I can guarantee, that they're going to go up. Those costs for out-of-county housing are going to go up. Right now we're paying over $1.3 million to house 90 people out of county. And that's, including the contracts and then the transportation, the employee cost. Altogether, it's over $1.3 million. Now you look at, and I want to be very transparent, if we have all of our inmates under one roof, we'll have to hire additional staff. But we've costed that out, and it's cheaper to hire additional staff than to house them out of county. Just on that, and that, note, that important thing to bring up. That it's cheaper to hire extra people than to house out of county. And remember, $1.3 million is right now. What it's going to be in 2023 on the first of the year, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be more than that. Yeah. You can estimate probably, we pay $35 a day for one inmate in, I believe it's Adams County, and 36 in Waupaca, or it could be vice versa. I can guarantee you it'll probably be around 40, if not more. We've been doing a lot of research and finding out that the average cost per inmate per day, throughout the state is around $44. So that cost is going to go up, and we should really, we need to look at that. Yeah. Because that's not something that I can personally control. We're going to do our best to negotiate with the other facilities, but the cost is up. Even if we can get out of, if we can get our inmate population lowered, through safe reasons, through, working on those recidivism rates, with the inmate programming, I still, we're going to be housing out of county no matter what. Yeah. It's a fact. And again, this is something that it's only going to, the cost is only going to go up the longer we drag this out. So it certainly needs to be, not only get this going, but it needs to be completely, everybody, the community needs to understand all the logistics and all the numbers and everything that it is a part of this. And be vocal about it, how you feel about it and everything, because it's important. Yeah, it is very important. But before we wrap up today, because we always run out of time, I promise one of these days you and I are just going to talk 90s baseball. It's going to happen one of
of these days we'll have time.
Now.
Yeah. I did want to mention something that was something that I noticed, and it just really, when I get on the air here and I get on my soapbox and I talk about something, maybe one or two people might listen, but most people probably tune me out, and I completely get that. But when you guys say something, it carries a little more weight, and so just asking people, as we're opening things up more and we're getting more used, and there's more vehicles on the road, and we're getting close to the end of the school year. Not everybody is used to having to slow down around school buses and these sorts of things, and keeping in mind that kids are kids, and we were all a kid once. We understand what it's like. We're not always thinking. Sometimes we run into the street and we're chasing the ball, or sometimes we run across the street real quick without looking both ways, because they're human beings, because they're children. So think for them. Be the adult in the situation. And understand that driving is not a right; it's a privilege, and part of that comes with a lot of responsibility. And one of those responsibilities is looking out for your fellow citizens, looking out for people. And one accident is too much, let alone the accidents that have happened in the last couple of months, over the last couple of years. Just do a little digging, gang. It's not hard to find. You guys know better than I do. The incidents where we've had, kids hit by cars or by drivers and these sorts of things. Mm-hmm. Just reminding people to, be aware of their surroundings and slow down.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we respond to tragedies like you mentioned, and Doug and I both were in our career accident reconstructionists, and when we get called out to something, we're investigating tragedy, and we did have one recently up on the north end of our county in the town of Auburndale on Wide Road near North Road, and where a 6-year-old was struck and killed by a school bus. Our hearts go out to the family. They're dealing with a tragedy, and we. And we are too. This is not an easy situation for anybody, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. We're fortunate enough to have the State Patrol assisting us with their traffic reconstruction unit. These types of investigations, speaking from experience, take time. Yeah. I know people want answers now, but that just doesn't happen, unfortunately. It's just a situation that these investigations take time, and you don't want to rush things along, but that's not easy for people to hear. But we're working through it. It's just a terrible tragedy that a family's going through. Our family, our law enforcement, first responders, that family is also struggling to go through it, that situation. But to echo what you mentioned before, please, as drivers, just be aware. Slow down. Obey speed limits. Be observant. And
there are tragedies, and then there are preventable tragedies. And there are things that we can prevent. These are things that if we just take some time and just take some patience, slow down a little bit, that sort of thing. And it doesn't take a lot to be able to do. Cannot thank you both enough for the time. Thank you so much for being in with us today. A big thank you to Joe and our friends over at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, certainly, and our Wood County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Doug Christianson, of course, Sheriff Shawn Becker, for being here. Thank you both all so much for the time. Be safe, stay strong out there, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. We'll have more Morning Magazine for you tomorrow right here on AM 13.